The gate agent looked down on the twins and refused to let them board the plane. But shortly after, she and the entire airline faced serious consequences because of a single call to their father.
The stories shared on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment. Any similarity to real events, individuals, or locations is entirely coincidental.
Welcome to Unseen Power. We hope you enjoy the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts by leaving a comment below the video.
You're not getting on this plane. Not today. Not ever. The words didn't just echo across Terminal 4 at JFK. They cut through it. Sharp. Final. The kind of sentence that doesn't invite argument. The kind that ends things. A glass coffee cup clinked somewhere behind them. A suitcase wheel stuttered and stopped. Conversations collapsed mid-breath. Every eye turned. At the center of it stood Linda Whitmore. 52. Senior gate agent. 25 years behind that podium. Her uniform was pressed like armor. Her posture rigid. Her yeux set in the quiet certainty of someone who believed she knew exactly how the world worked. And in front of her, two young women who, in her mind, did not belong. Alyssa Grant stood slightly ahead of her sister. Shoulders relaxed, chin level, fingers wrapped loosely around the handle of a Rimowa suitcase that probably cost more than Linda's monthly mortgage. Her hoodie was soft beige, oversized, expensive without trying to be. Her braids were pulled back, neat, deliberate, her eyes steady. Beside her, Amara Grant shifted her weight, one hand tightening on her phone, the other brushing nervously against the edge of her sleeve. Same face, same height, same quiet presence. But her eyes flickered. She felt it. The shift in the air. The attention. The judgment. Linda didn't blink. "Economy check-in is around the corner," she said, voice flat, dismissive, already turning her screen slightly away as if the conversation was over. Alyssa didn't move. "We're flying first class," she said. Not loud, not defensive, measured, the kind of calm that doesn't beg to be believed. Linda let out a slow breath through her nose, like she'd heard this before, like she was tired of this exact moment playing out with different faces. Now she looked up. Really looked. Her eyes traveled. Hoodie, sneakers, youth, skin. Something in her expression tightened. Not confusion, not curiosity. Recognition. Not of who they were, but of what she believed they were. "Boarding pass," she said, holding out her hand without warmth. Amara stepped forward quickly, eager, almost relieved to resolve it. "Yeah, we checked in online, but the app said we needed." Linda took the phone before she finished. Snatched it. Not scanned. Not yet. She stared at the screen, then at the girls, then back again. A beat. Another. The silence stretched just long enough for the people in line behind them to lean in. A man in a navy blazer adjusted his cuff, watching. A woman in heels lowered her sunglasses, just enough to see. Linda's lips moved. "Grant," she muttered. Alyssa caught it. "Yes," she said. "Is there a problem?" Linda tilted her head slightly. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Doubt. Disbelief. Something sharper underneath. "These tickets are marked executive partner status." She said it slowly. carefully, like she was explaining something obvious to someone who just didn't get it. That classification is reserved for corporate affiliates, board members, high-level partners. Alyssa nodded once. That's correct. A pause. Then Linda smiled. Not kindly. Right, she said. And I'm the First Lady. A quiet ripple moved through the line. Amara's fingers tightened around her phone. Our father booked those tickets. I don't care if your father is Jay-Z, Linda snapped, louder now, the edge finally breaking through. We've had warnings about fraudulent bookings coming out of corporate accounts. People think they can just, she gestured vaguely at them, walk up here and slip through, like they were trying to sneak into something they hadn't earned. Alyssa's jaw flexed. Just once. Scan the tickets, she said. Still calm. Still controlled. If they're fake, call security. But don't stand there and tell us we don't belong because you don't like how we look. That did it. Linda straightened. The temperature dropped. I am the lead agent on this floor, she said, voice rising just enough to draw more attention, just enough to turn this into something official. And I have full discretion to deny boarding to anyone exhibiting aggressive behavior. She leaned forward slightly. And right now, your tone is aggressive. There it was. The shift. Not fraud anymore. Behavior. Attitude. A trap dressed as policy. Behind them, the man in the navy blazer sighed loudly. Come on, some of us actually have flights to catch. Alyssa didn't turn. Her eyes stayed locked on Linda. We're not moving, she said. Simple. Flat. Final. For a split second, something flickered across Linda's face. Not doubt. Something closer to irritation. To offense. Like she had been challenged in a space where she never was. Security, she called out, raising her hand without looking away. The word moved faster than sound. 2 officers turned from across the terminal. One older, heavier, walking with the slow confidence of someone who had done this 100 times. The other younger, sharper, already scanning the situation like it was solved before he arrived. Officer Reed. Officer Blake. They approached without urgency, without questions. Linda pointed. These 2 are refusing to leave the priority lane. Fraudulent tickets, belligerent behavior. Belligerent. The word hung there. Heavy, convenient. Officer Reed looked at the twins. He didn't ask for the boarding pass, didn't ask what happened. He saw the posture, the tension, the pointing finger. That was enough. Ladies, he said, resting a hand near his belt, you're going to need to step out of the line. Amara blinked. We haven't done anything. Linda didn't miss a beat. I felt threatened. The lie landed smoothly. Practiced, effortless. Alyssa exhaled slowly. And in that breath, something changed. Not panic, not fear. Calculation. Her father's voice, somewhere in the back of her mind, steady as ever. When they get loud, you get quiet. When they get emotional, you get precise. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone. Linda laughed under her breath. Go ahead. Call whoever you think is going to fix this. Alyssa didn't respond. She unlocked the screen, tapped once, held it to her ear. Her eyes never left Linda. You might want to remember that name, she said quietly. The call connected on the first ring. Dad. No greeting, no hesitation. Just one word, steady, controlled, carrying more weight than anything shouted seconds earlier. Across the terminal, the noise seemed to pull back, like the building itself was listening. In a glass tower in midtown Manhattan, 58 floors above a city that never stopped moving, Charles Grant didn't look at his phone when it lit up. He already knew who it was. There was a rule, one that had never been broken. When his daughters called, everything else waited. A boardroom full of executives froze mid-sentence as he lifted his hand. The CFO stopped talking. A slide presentation hung unfinished on the screen. Numbers, projections, risk models, all of it suddenly irrelevant. Charles picked up the phone. Alyssa. His voice was low, even, but something in it sharpened to the air. You should be in the lounge. A pause. A breath on the other end. Controlled, but not calm. We're not, she said. We're by the check-in line. They denied boarding. The room behind him went silent in a different way now. Not business silence, something colder. Charles turned slightly, angling away from the table. His reflection stared back at him in the glass wall. Grey suit, perfect lines, no wasted motion. Denied? He asked. Why? A beat. The gate agent said our tickets were fake. Alyssa's voice tightened just enough to let the truth through. She called security. We've been removed from the line. Removed. The word landed heavier than anything else. Charles didn't speak for a second. Not because he didn't understand. Because he did. Too well. They didn't scan the tickets, Alyssa continued. She looked at us and decided we didn't belong. Behind him, someone shifted in their chair. Another executive glanced at the door. No one spoke. Charles's jaw set. Is your sister with you? Yes. Is she okay? A softer breath this time. She's shaken. Charles nodded once, though no one could see it. Good, he said quietly. That means she understands what just happened. Alyssa didn't respond, because she did understand. Every look, every word, every assumption. It wasn't new. It was just louder this time. They flagged our profiles, she added. Said we're banned. Now Charles' eyes changed. Just slightly. Enough to make the assistant standing near the door straighten instinctively. Put the agent on the phone, he said. We can't get back to the counter, Alyssa replied. Security won't let us near it. Another pause. Longer this time. Charles looked out over the skyline. Somewhere in the distance, planes lifted into the sky, one after another, thin white trails cutting across the morning light. Fuel, routes, timelines, all of it connected, all of it fragile. All right, he said finally. Listen carefully. Alyssa shifted the phone closer to her ear. Her eyes flicked once toward Linda Whitmore, still standing behind the podium, still processing passengers like nothing had happened. Don't argue with anyone else, Charles said. Don't raise your voice. Don't explain. Don't defend. His tone didn't rise, but it hardened. You've already given them more than they deserve. Alyssa nodded faintly. What are you going to do? Charles turned back toward the room. 12 executives sat frozen, watching him like they were witnessing something they didn't fully understand yet. I'm going to make a phone call, he said. A beat. And then I'm going to come get you. He ended the call. No hesitation, no second thought. The silence in the boardroom stretched. The CFO cleared his throat carefully. Is everything? Meeting adjourned, Charles said. No explanation, no apology. Just a statement. The kind that didn't invite questions. Chairs shifted, papers gathered. No one moved too fast. No one wanted to be the first to leave. Charles was already walking. Marcus, he said. His assistant fell into step beside him instantly, iPad already in hand. Pull up the Centurion Air Fuel contract for JFK. Marcus's fingers moved quickly across the screen. Yes, sir. I want the exclusivity clause. Full text. Got it. They reached the elevator. The doors opened before Charles even slowed down. And get me Daniel Henderson, Charles added. Marcus hesitated just a fraction. The airport operations director? Yes. He's in a Port Authority meeting right now. Then interrupted. Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. The elevator doors closed. As they descended, the air inside the car felt tighter, heavier. Marcus glanced down at the screen. Clause 44, he said. Vendor reserves the right to suspend services in the event of reputational risk, Charles finished. He didn't need to read it. He had written that clause years ago, for situations exactly like this. Get Henderson on the line, Charles said. Marcus tapped once, twice. The call rang. No answer. Marcus swallowed. He's not picking up. Charles didn't look at him. Call again. Marcus did. Still nothing. The elevator hit the lobby with a soft chime. Doors opened. Charles stepped out. Tell him, Charles said, voice calm. If he doesn't take this call, the pumps stop in 10 minutes. Marcus froze for half a second, then nodded. He knew that tone. That wasn't a threat. It was a timeline. He dialed again. This time, the line clicked. Daniel Henderson. Marcus didn't speak. He handed the phone to Charles. Henderson, Charles said. A pause on the other end. Confusion first, then recognition. Mr. Grant, I need your full attention, Charles cut in. Right now. Another pause. Longer. I'm in a meeting, not anymore. Silence. Then a chair scraping somewhere in the background. A door closing. I'm listening, Henderson said. Charles didn't waste a second. Effective immediately, you are to halt all fuel distribution to Centurion Air aircraft at JFK. Henderson blinked, though Charles couldn't see it. I'm sorry. What? You heard me. That would ground every Centurion flight on the field. A beat. Why would you? Because your staff just created a hostile operating environment for my family. The words landed like steel. Henderson exhaled slowly. Charles, if this is about a customer service issue, it stopped being that the moment they called security on my daughters. Silence again. Heavier now. They flagged them, Charles continued. They banned them, without verification, without cause. Henderson ran a hand over his face. I can look into it. We can resolve this internally. No, Charles said. One word. Final. You can resolve it externally. A pause. What does that mean? It means, Charles said, the next truck that moves on that runway does so with my authorization. Henderson felt something shift. Not in the conversation, in the structure beneath it. You're serious? Charles didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, somewhere far below, engines roared as another aircraft prepared for departure. Fuel. Always fuel. 10 minutes, Charles said. And then he hung up. Marcus stood beside him, completely still. The lobby around them moved like nothing had changed. People walked. Phones rang. Doors opened and closed. But something had already started. Something quiet. Something precise. A clock had begun ticking. And at JFK Terminal 4, no one knew it yet. But the ground was about to stop moving. The first sign was so small, most people missed it. A flicker. One of the monitors above the Centurion air check-in desk blinked once, like it had second thoughts about staying on. Then it steadied. Flight times, destinations, gate numbers, all normal. Linda Whitmore didn't look up. She was smiling now. Not a warm smile, not customer service. Something tighter, self-satisfied. Next, she called, scanning a boarding pass without really seeing the man in front of her. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Efficient, mechanical, in control again. Behind her, the line flowed, the earlier disruption already fading into the background noise. People had places to be. Meetings to catch, connections to make. Problems like that, she thought, needed to be handled quickly, decisively. She adjusted the edge of her sleeve, smoothing it flat. A man in a grey suit leaned in as she handed back his passport. You handled that well, he said quietly, like they were sharing something private. Linda nodded once. Safety first. The words came easily. Practiced. She had said them 1,000 times. She believed them. Or at least, she believed the version of them that made her right. Across the terminal, near a row of vending machines humming under fluorescent lights, Alyssa and Amara stood side by side. Not speaking. Not moving. Amara wiped at her face again. Quickly, like she didn't want anyone to see. Her eyes were still wet, her breathing uneven. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving something colder behind. Humiliation. Alyssa didn't look at her. Her gaze stayed locked on the check-in desk. On Linda. On the way, the woman laughed lightly with the next passenger, like nothing had happened. Like two people hadn't just been pulled out of line and labeled a threat in front of 100 strangers. Alyssa's phone rested loosely in her hand. The call was over. But something had changed. Not outside. Not yet. Inside. Her shoulders lowered slightly. Her jaw unclenched. The tension didn't disappear. It sharpened. Amara glanced at her. Is he coming? Alyssa didn't answer right away. She watched Linda accept another boarding pass. Watched her nod. Smile. Move on. Yes, she said finally. He's coming. Amara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. What's he going to do? Alyssa's lips pressed together. He said to wait. That was enough, because when their father said wait, it never meant nothing was happening. It meant everything was. Back at the desk, Linda reached for the next passport. And then the screen went black. Just for a second. A blink. She frowned. Tapped the keyboard once. Twice. The display came back. Normal. System glitch, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. The passenger in front of her shifted impatiently. Everything okay? Of course, Linda said quickly, her smile snapping back into place. Just a minor refresh. She hit enter again. Nothing happened. Her fingers paused, then moved faster. Still nothing. Behind her, one of the larger overhead monitors flickered. Once. Twice. Then went dark. A ripple moved through the terminal. Small. Subtle. A few heads turned. Linda's smile faltered. She reached for the radio clipped to her belt, pressing the talk button with her thumb. Gate B4. Do we have a system issue? Static. Then a voice, faint at first. Stand by. She waited. Tapped the keyboard again. The cursor blinked, and blinked, and blinked. Nothing else. A bead of sweat formed at her temple. Come on, she whispered under her breath, fingers pressing harder now, like force would fix it. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice wasn't calm. Ground to all stations. Hold all boarding. Repeat. Hold all boarding immediately. Linda froze. What? She said into the radio. We're mid-boarding here. What's going on? The response came louder. Faster. Not controlled. We have a fuel issue. The trucks have stopped. The words didn't make sense at first. Stopped? Linda repeated. They're not moving. The voice snapped. All fuel trucks are offline. We don't have clearance to proceed. A man in line leaned forward. Excuse me. What does that mean for our flight? Linda ignored him. This has to be a system error, she said into the radio, her voice tightening. Reset the dispatch authorization. Already tried, came the reply. Codes aren't going through. Another voice cut in. Different. Higher up. Gate agents, stop boarding now. That's an order. Linda turned. Her station manager, Gary Thompson, was running toward her from across the terminal. His tie was crooked, his face pale. That alone was enough to make her stomach drop. Gary, she said, relief and irritation mixing in her voice. We've got a glitch. It's not a glitch, Gary said, out of breath, eyes wide. We just got a stop work order. Linda blinked. From who? Gary swallowed. Grant Energy. The name hit her like a physical thing. Grant. Her mind jumped back, uninvited. The boarding passes, the name on the screen. The girls. No, that doesn't make sense, she said, shaking her head slightly. They can't just, they can, Gary snapped, lowering his voice as he stepped closer. They just did. Behind them, the terminal shifted. Not slowly, all at once. Passengers started talking, louder, faster, questions overlapping, frustration building like pressure in a sealed room. What do you mean, no fuel? My connection is in Zurich. You're telling me this entire airport is just stopping? Phones came out. Screens lit up. Someone started recording. Linda's hands hovered over the keyboard, useless now. What triggered it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gary hesitated. Just for a second, then looked at her. Clause breach, he said. Unsafe operating environment. The words didn't land all at once. They unfolded, slowly. And when they did, Linda's stomach dropped. Her eyes moved, almost against her will, across the terminal, toward the vending machines, toward two figures standing perfectly still. Alyssa Grant. Amara Grant. Alyssa was holding her phone. Not to her ear. Not anymore. Just holding it. And she was smiling. Not loud, not triumphant. Something colder. Something precise. Like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Like she knew exactly how this would play out. The noise around them swelled. Gary was already moving, barking orders into his radio, trying to regain control of something that was slipping through his hands. Linda didn't move. Couldn't. Because for the first time since this started, she wasn't the one in control. And somewhere out on the runway, engines idled. Fuel lines stayed empty. And time started running out. The sound came back before the movement did. A low, restless murmur spreading across the terminal, rising in uneven waves. Not panic yet. Not fully. But something close. The kind of noise people make when they realize control has slipped just out of reach. Gary Thompson was already shouting into two radios at once, his voice cracking under pressure. I need confirmation from Ops. I need a timeline. Someone give me a timeline. No one did. Every reply came back the same way. Fragmented, uncertain, defensive. The kind of answers that meant no one had one. Linda Whitmore stood behind her counter, hands resting on the edge of the desk, as if she needed the surface to hold her up. The screen in front of her stayed dark now. No flicker, no cursor. Just black. She tapped it once. Nothing. Again. Nothing. A man slammed his passport down on the counter. What is going on? I have a connection in London in 2 hours. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was anger under it. Another voice cut in from behind him. This is ridiculous. I paid for first class. You people better figure this out. Phones were up now. Not just a few. Dozens. Angles from every direction. Faces lit by screens. Voices recording. Waiting. Linda swallowed. We're experiencing a temporary systems interruption, she said, forcing the words out, trying to keep them steady. Please remain calm while we... Her voice broke. Just slightly. Enough for her to hear it. Enough to feel it. She stopped. Gary turned on her. Stop talking, he hissed, low enough that only she could hear. You're making it worse. Linda blinked at him. I didn't. You did, he cut in. And right now I don't have time to clean it up. He turned back to the crowd, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are temporarily pausing boarding due to an operational delay. We appreciate your patience. The words landed flat. No one believed him. Not anymore. Across the terminal, Alyssa hadn't moved. She stood with her weight evenly balanced, one hand still resting on the handle of her suitcase, the other loosely holding her phone. Her eyes tracked everything. The monitors going dark, the voices rising, the way Gary's confidence cracked first at the edges, then down the middle. Amara stood beside her, arms folded now, shoulders drawn in. The tears were gone, replaced by something else, something sharper. "This is because of him, isn't it?" she whispered. Alyssa didn't look at her. Yes. Outside, on the tarmac, the stillness had weight. 3 massive aircraft sat idle, their engines quiet, their lights blinking in slow, patient rhythms. Beside them, a line of fuel trucks painted in deep blue and silver, the Grant Energy logo stamped clean across the sides, stood frozen in place. Drivers leaned against the metal frames, arms crossed, not moving, not responding to the frantic gestures of ground crew waving from a distance. Inside the terminal, the radio on Gary's shoulder crackled again. "Station manager, confirm. All Grant supply has been suspended. Authorization codes revoked. Repeat, revoked." Gary closed his eyes for half a second. Just one. When he opened them again, something in his face had aged. "Who authorized that?" he demanded. Silence. Then, "Direct order from Grant headquarters." Gary turned slowly. His gaze found Linda. She shook her head before he even spoke. "No," she said, voice thin. "No, that can't be." "What did you do?" Gary asked. Not loud, not yelling, worse, controlled, tight. Linda's mouth opened. Closed. I followed protocol. The words sounded weak even to her. Gary stared at her for a long second. "Protocol doesn't shut down an airport," he said. The noise around them spiked. Someone near the front of the line raised their voice. "I'm calling corporate. This is unacceptable." Another voice. "My lawyer will be hearing about this." A woman in heels stepped forward, phone raised. "You better explain why none of these flights are leaving." The pressure was building. Fast. Gary turned away from Linda and grabbed the landline behind the counter, dialing with shaking fingers. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on. Pick up." No answer. He slammed the receiver down, then picked it up again, dialing a different number. "Operations, this is Thompson. I need Escalation authority." "Now." He listened, his face drained further. "You're telling me there is nothing you can do?" A pause. Then he hung up slowly. Linda's eyes drifted again, pulled like a magnet back toward the vending machines. Alyssa was still there, still watching, still calm. And now, recording. The phone in her hand was angled just slightly upward, capturing everything. Gary. The crowd, the chaos blooming outward in real time. Alyssa's lips curved again. Not wide, not cruel, certain. Linda felt something cold settle in her chest. A realization. Too late. Too clear. Gary followed her line of sight. He saw them. The twins, still standing exactly where they had been left. Not yelling, not demanding, just waiting. "That's them," he said under his breath. Linda didn't answer. She couldn't. Gary walked out from behind the counter, straightening his tie as he moved, trying to rebuild something that had already collapsed. He approached slowly, carefully, like he was stepping into something volatile. "Miss," he called out, voice softer now, controlled. "Miss, can we talk for a moment?" Alyssa didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't meet him halfway. She let him come to her. Gary stopped a few feet away, forcing a polite smile. "I'm Gary Thompson, station manager. I believe there's been some kind of misunderstanding earlier. I'd like to resolve this quickly so we can get you on your flight." Amara glanced at Alyssa, then back at Gary. Her eyes were red but steady now. "A misunderstanding," she repeated quietly. Gary nodded quickly. "Yes, of course. If we can just verify your tickets. You had that chance," Alyssa said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean. Gary paused, just for a fraction of a second. "Right," he said, adjusting. "Well, we can correct that now." Alyssa tilted her head slightly. "Can you unban us from your system?" Gary hesitated. That's something we can look into. Can you remove the security flag your agent placed on our profiles?" Another hesitation. "We would need to. Can you undo the fact that she called us scammers in front of all these people?" Gary didn't answer. Because there was no answer. The crowd had quieted again. Not because the problem was solved, because something else was happening. Something more interesting than a delayed flight. Accountability. Gary cleared his throat. "We can make this right," he said. "Upgrades, compensation, whatever is necessary." Alyssa's eyes didn't soften. "We didn't ask for anything extra," she said. "We asked to be treated like we belong." The words hung there. Heavy. Unavoidable. Behind Gary, Linda Whitmore stood frozen, watching everything unfold like it was happening to someone else. But it wasn't. It was hers. Every second of it. Gary nodded slowly. "Understood," he said. "Then let's start there." Alyssa's phone buzzed. Once. She glanced down, then back up. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. A shift. Subtle. Final. "He's here," she said. Gary frowned. "Who?" The automatic doors at the far end of the terminal slid open, and everything changed. The air shifted before anyone understood why. It wasn't loud. Not at first, just a subtle change in the rhythm of the room. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Phones lifted higher, like instinct was guiding them toward something they couldn't yet see. The automatic glass doors at the far end of Terminal 4 slid open with a smooth, silent precision. And then they stepped in. Two men in dark suits moved first. Broad shoulders, measured strides, not aggressive, not hurried, but undeniable. The kind of presence that didn't ask for space. It took it. People shifted without being told. Conversations died mid-sentence as they passed. Behind them, Charles Grant entered the terminal. He didn't look around. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight forward, long, even strides, his charcoal overcoat draped clean over his shoulders, the lines of his suit cut with surgical precision. His face was calm, not angry, not emotional, controlled, the kind of control that didn't need volume, the kind that carried consequences. At his side, walked a woman in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, composed, carrying a slim leather portfolio. Veronica Hale, legal counsel. Her heels struck the polished floor in steady rhythm. No wasted movement, no wasted attention. On his other side, struggling to keep pace, was Daniel Henderson, the airport operations director. His face was pale, his tie loosened, his composure cracking at the edges. "Charles, we can handle this in private," Henderson said, voice low, urgent. "There's no need to escalate this in the middle of the terminal." Charles didn't slow down, didn't look at him. "There was no need to call security on my daughters either," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, like steel drawn across glass. Henderson swallowed. They kept moving. The crowd parted without instruction. People stepped back instinctively, clearing a path through the chaos. Phones tracked them. Cameras locked in. The story was shifting. Fast. At the vending machines, Alyssa saw him first. She didn't move, didn't run to him, didn't wave. She just stood there, steady, as he approached. Amara's breath caught beside her. "Oh my God," she whispered. Charles stopped in front of them. Everything behind him stopped too. The terminal held its breath. For a moment, he said nothing. He looked at them, not scanning, not checking, seeing. His eyes moved from Alyssa to Amara, taking in the details no one else had bothered to notice. The tension in their shoulders, the way Amara's fingers still trembled slightly, the controlled stillness in Alyssa's posture. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Alyssa shook her head once. "No." Amara didn't speak. She just stepped forward. Charles pulled them both into a brief, firm embrace. Not dramatic, not emotional, but unmistakable. A message. To them. And to everyone watching. When he stepped back, the air around him hardened. He turned, slowly, toward the check-in desk, toward Linda Whitmore. Gary Thompson stepped forward quickly, intercepting him halfway, forcing a smile that looked more like a strain. "Mr. Grant," Gary said, voice overly bright, overly eager. "What an unexpected—" Charles walked past him. Didn't stop. Didn't acknowledge him. Gary's words died in his throat. The distance between Charles and the desk closed in seconds. Linda Whitmore didn't move. She couldn't. Her hands hovered mid-air, a boarding pass still between her fingers. Her mind was racing, trying to catch up, trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she believed. Grant, the name, the tickets, the girls. No. No, that wasn't. Charles stopped directly in front of her, placed both hands flat on the counter. Calm, deliberate, final. He looked up at her. "Whitmore," he said. Not a question, a statement. Linda's mouth opened. No sound came out. Her throat tightened. Yes. She managed finally. "I'm the lead agent here." Charles nodded once. "Good." The word landed like a verdict. "That means you're responsible." Veronica stepped forward smoothly, placing a single sheet of paper on the counter. Not a ticket. Not a boarding pass. A contract. Clean. Official. Binding. Linda's eyes flicked down to it, then back up. I don't understand, she said, her voice thinning under the weight pressing in around her. Charles didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. My daughters, he said, each word precise, were denied boarding under the claim of fraudulent documentation. He paused. Is that correct? Linda swallowed. I followed protocol, she said. Their tickets were flagged. By whom? The question cut clean. Linda hesitated. Too long. I saw. You saw two young women in hoodies, Charles said, his tone unchanged, and decided that was enough. A ripple moved through the crowd. Phones tilted closer, capturing every second. That's not what I said, Linda snapped, a flicker of defensiveness breaking through. They were aggressive. They caused a disruption, Alyssa, Charles said, without looking away from Linda. Alyssa stepped forward, calm, precise. She lifted her phone, pressed play. The audio filled the space. Clear, unfiltered. I don't care if your father is Jay-Z. Scam. You don't belong here. Security. Every word, every tone, every assumption, laid bare. Linda's face drained of color. The recording ended. Silence followed. Thick, heavy, unforgiving. Charles tapped the counter once. That doesn't sound like aggression, he said. His voice dropped slightly. Lower. Sharper. That sounds like prejudice. Linda's lips trembled. I have discretion, she said, clinging to the last thread of authority she had left. I have the right to deny. And I, Charles interrupted, leaning in just slightly, have the right to enforce the contracts that keep your planes in the air. The words didn't rise, but they hit harder than anything shouted before. He straightened, turned slightly, addressing not just her, but everyone. For those of you wondering why your flights are delayed, he said, voice carrying now, controlled but undeniable. It's because Grant Energy does not supply fuel to companies that profile my family as criminals. The terminal went still. Completely. No movement, no sound, just the weight of what had been said. Charles looked back at Linda. His expression didn't change, but something final settled behind his eyes. You didn't just deny boarding, he said quietly. You stopped an entire airline. The silence didn't break all at once. It cracked, a low ripple of disbelief moving through the crowd, like a pressure wave rolling outward from the check-in desk. Faces turned, phones lifted higher. Someone whispered, "Did he just say he stopped the fuel?" Another voice, sharper, "That's impossible." But no one sounded certain anymore. Gary Thompson felt it first in his chest. A tightening, a realization settling in faster than he could process. He looked past Charles, past the crowd, through the tall glass windows toward the runway. The trucks were still there, not moving, not even idling forward, waiting. Gary swallowed hard. His voice came out thinner than he intended. Mr. Grant, with all due respect, grounding an entire operation over a single incident is not a single incident, Charles said. He didn't look at Gary. He didn't raise his voice. But the interruption landed like a shut door. It is a breach. Gary stopped, because he heard it now. Not anger, not emotion. Language, Precise, legal, final. Veronica Hale stepped forward again, already opening her portfolio. Clause 44, Section B, she said, her tone crisp, professional. Vendor reserves the right to suspend operations immediately if client conduct creates a reputational risk or exposes affiliated parties to discriminatory treatment. She placed the document flat on the counter, sliding it toward Gary this time. This clause was executed 15 minutes ago. Gary stared at the paper. The words blurred, because the reality behind them was clearer than anything printed. Behind him, a passenger pushed forward. A woman in her 50s, tailored suit, sharp voice. "Are you telling me my flight to London is cancelled because of this?" Another voice cut in. "I have a connection in Dubai. This is unacceptable." A third, louder. "We're paying customers. Fix it!" The pressure shifted. It wasn't just about two girls anymore. It was about everyone. Gary felt it closing in from all sides. He looked back at Charles. "What do you want?" he asked. Not aggressive, not defensive, direct, because there was no other move left. Charles turned slightly, finally acknowledging him fully. "I want accountability," he said. Gary nodded quickly. "You'll have it. We'll file a report. We'll open an investigation. No. One word. Clean. Sharp. Immediate." Charles stepped closer. "Not invading space, claiming it." "I don't want a report," he said. "I don't want a review." His eyes didn't leave Gary's. "I want you to fix what happened." Gary's throat tightened. "We can offer compensation, upgrades, refunds. Whatever is necessary, I don't need your money." The sentence landed heavier than anything before it. "I can buy your airline," Charles added, almost casually. No one laughed. No one moved, because it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like fact. Behind them, Captain Stephen Cole pushed through the crowd, his uniform crisp, his expression tight with controlled urgency, grey hair at his temples, decades in the air. A man used to solving problems quickly. "Gary," he said, voice low but firm. "We're at 10% fuel. If we don't get clearance in the next few minutes, I'm shutting the aircraft down." Gary didn't turn, didn't respond, because the problem wasn't in the air anymore. It was standing right in front of him. "Ask her," Charles said quietly. He didn't need to gesture. Everyone knew who he meant. Captain Cole followed his gaze. To Linda Whitmore. She looked smaller now, not physically, but in presence. The authority she wore like armor 30 minutes ago had dissolved, piece by piece under the weight of what was happening. "Ma'am," the captain said, stepping forward, his voice steady but edged with disbelief. "Is this accurate? You denied valid passengers based on assumption." Linda's lips parted. No sound. Her eyes flicked to Gary, then back to the captain. "I thought," she started. The words collapsed before they could finish. "You thought," the captain repeated, not loudly, but with something in it that cut deeper than anger. "Did you verify the ticket?" "I was going to, but you didn't." Silence. The captain exhaled slowly, running a hand across his jaw. "We are grounding a fully loaded aircraft. because you decided not to check a boarding pass. It wasn't just that, Linda said, desperation creeping into her voice now. They were different. The word came from behind. Alyssa. She stepped forward again. Not rushing, not emotional. Controlled. Say it, she said. Linda shook her head quickly. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Alyssa asked. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried, because now everyone was listening. Linda's eyes darted around, looking for support, for agreement, for anything. There was none, just cameras, and silence, and consequence. I followed protocol, she said again, weaker this time. Veronica tapped the document lightly. There was no system flag, she said. We have the purchase records, direct booking, corporate account. Verified 6 weeks ago. She turned the iPad toward the crowd. Transaction history, names, dates, clear, undeniable. The only manual flag in the system, Veronica continued, was created by user IDL. Whitmore at 9:42 this morning. A murmur spread. Sharper now, accusatory. She flagged them herself, someone whispered. Another voice. So she made it up. The shift was complete. The crowd wasn't confused anymore. They had chosen a side. Gary closed his eyes for a moment. Just one. When he opened them again, the decision was already made. He turned to Linda. She saw it. Before he spoke. Before the words came. She saw it. Gary, she said, stepping back slightly. I've been here 25 years. You can't. Log off, Gary said. His voice shook. But it held. Gary, please, log off your terminal. The words came louder now. Clear. Public. Final. Linda's hands trembled. She looked around, at the crowd, at the cameras, at the officers standing nearby, at the 2 young women she had dismissed less than an hour ago. And for the first time, she understood. Not what she had done, but what it had cost. You're firing me, she said. It wasn't a question. Gary didn't hesitate. You are relieved of duty effective immediately pending investigation. A sharp intake of breath moved through the terminal. Linda's shoulders sagged. Just slightly, like something inside her had given way. No, she whispered. But there was no one left to hear it. Gary reached across the counter, typing in an override code. The screen in front of Linda went dark. Completely. He held out his hand. Badge. Her fingers moved slowly, mechanically, unclipping the plastic ID from her uniform. The small click echoed louder than it should have. She placed it in his hand. And just like that, it was over. Gary turned to the officers. Escort her out. Officer Reed stepped forward. Not the same posture as before. Not the same confidence. Ma'am, he said quietly. This way. Linda didn't resist. She couldn't. As she walked away from the counter, through the same space she had controlled for decades, the crowd parted again. But this time, no one stepped back out of respect. They stepped back to watch. No applause, No cheering. Just silence. Cold. Final. And as the doors opened and closed behind her, the balance of power in Terminal 4 shifted completely. And Charles Grant still hadn't moved. No one spoke for a full second after the doors closed behind her. Not a whisper, not a breath loud enough to carry. It was the kind of silence that doesn't come from calm. It comes from impact. Gary Thompson stood there with the badge still in his hand, staring at it like it weighed more than it should, like it meant something beyond plastic and metal. Around him, the terminal pulsed with restrained energy. Hundreds of people waiting for the next move, the next decision, the next shift. Charles Grant didn't look at the door. He didn't follow her exit. His attention stayed exactly where it had been. On the problem. On the system. On the correction. Gary cleared his throat, forcing himself back into motion. "She's gone," he said, voice still uneven but trying to stabilize. "The personnel issue has been addressed." He looked at Charles. "Waiting, hoping. Now we can restore operations," he added quickly. "We can get your daughters on their flight immediately." Charles didn't answer. He glanced once toward Alyssa and Amara, confirming something without words, then turned back to Gary. "Processing paperwork doesn't resolve the breach," he said. Gary's stomach tightened again. "We removed her, effective immediately." "And what have you changed?" Charles asked. The question hung. Gary blinked. "We will retrain staff. We'll review protocols." "That's future tense." Charles stepped closer, his presence pressing into the space between them, without aggression, without force, but with undeniable gravity. "I'm asking about now." Gary opened his mouth, closed it, because there was no immediate answer. Behind him, Captain Cole shifted his weight, glancing toward the windows again. "We're running out of time," he said quietly. "If those trucks don't move in the next few minutes, I'm shutting the aircraft down. That's a full reset, minimum 2 hours delay, maybe more." The words hit the crowd harder than anything before. 2 hours, connections missed, plans broken. The murmur rose again, louder this time, more urgent. A businessman stepped forward, voice sharp. "Fix it! Whatever you have to do, fix it!" Another passenger raised her phone higher. "This is going everywhere. You hear me? Everywhere!" Gary felt the pressure spike. Every second counted now. Every decision. He looked back at Charles. "What do you need to see?" he asked. Not defensive, not pleading, direct, because there was no room left for anything else. Charles held his gaze for a long moment, measuring, evaluating. Then he spoke. "I need to know that this isn't just about one employee." Gary nodded quickly. "It's not. We take this seriously, do you? Not a question. A challenge." Gary swallowed. "Yes." Charles tilted his head slightly. "Then prove it." The words were simple. The implication wasn't. Gary's mind moved fast now, running through options, consequences, risks. Not just operational, legal, financial, reputational. Everything was connected, and all of it was visible. Right now. He turned slightly, scanning the faces around him. Passengers, staff, cameras. Witnesses. No privacy, no buffer, no delay. "All right," Gary said, more to himself than anyone else. Then louder. "All right." He stepped forward, positioning himself where everyone could see him clearly. His voice rose, not shouting, but strong enough to carry. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I want to address what just happened." The crowd quieted. Not completely, but enough. Gary took a breath. "This morning, a decision was made at this desk that should not have been made," he continued. "It was based on assumption, not verification, and it resulted in 2 passengers being treated unfairly." He paused, letting it land, letting the words settle into the space. "That is not the standard of this airline," he said. Charles didn't react, didn't nod, didn't move. Gary continued. "Effective immediately, we are reversing all actions taken against these passengers. Their profiles are cleared, their status is restored, and they will be boarded with full priority access." A murmur of approval moved through part of the crowd. Not all, but enough. Gary's voice tightened slightly as he pushed forward. "In addition, we are initiating a full review of our check-in protocols, with immediate oversight from corporate compliance." He stopped, looked back at Charles. "Right now," he added, "we are correcting the issue." The terminal held that moment, waiting. Charles studied him. Not the words, the intent, the execution, the weight behind it. Then he nodded. Once on small, controlled, but enough. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his phone. No ceremony, no pause. He dialed. The call connected quickly. "Ops," he said. "This is Grant." The room leaned in, not physically, but collectively. "Resume flow," he continued. "Authorization code Sierra Alpha 1. A beat. He listened. His eyes moved briefly toward the windows. Toward the runway. "Yes," he said. "All aircraft. Prioritize Zurich departure." He ended the call, and just like that, the shift began. Outside, engines turned, not all at once, but in sequence. One truck first, then another. The deep mechanical growl rolled across the tarmac, low and powerful, vibrating through the glass, through the floor, through the air itself. Inside the terminal, the monitors flickered. Once, twice, then back to life. Flight information reappeared. Gate assignments, departure times, and next to flight 808. The red hold, status blinked, changed. Green, boarding. The reaction hit instantly. Cheers broke out. From one side of the terminal, spreading fast, uneven, building into something louder, something relieved, something grateful. Applause followed, not for the airline, not for the system, for the resolution, for the end of uncertainty. Gary exhaled, the tension in his shoulders dropping just enough to feel it. Captain Cole nodded once, already turning back toward the gate. "We're moving," he said. "Let's not waste it." Staff snapped into motion. Boarding resumed. The machine restarted. But something had changed. Something deeper than schedules and systems. At the center of it, Charles Grant stood still, watching, not celebrating, not reacting, just confirming. Alyssa stepped closer to him, her expression steady, her voice quiet. "It's done," she said. Charles looked at her. then at Amara, then back toward the terminal. "No," he said softly. "Now it is." The noise didn't disappear when the system came back. It shifted, from panic to release, from anger to something closer to awe. Conversations restarted in fragments, louder now, energized by what they had just witnessed. People weren't just talking about missed flights anymore. They were talking about power, about what they had seen unfold in real time. Gary Thompson wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, trying to regain something that felt like control. It wasn't coming back the same way. Not after this. Not after the entire terminal had watched him lose it. He turned quickly, already signaling to staff. "Move. Let's go. Priority boarding. Zurich first." His voice was sharper now, more focused. Less authority, more urgency. Agents scrambled into position. Systems reset. Boarding scanners lit up again, chirping one by one as the line started moving. But the eyes hadn't left. They stayed on Charles Grant. He hadn't stepped away, hadn't retreated. He stood exactly where he had been, hands relaxed at his sides, watching the machine restart as if he had simply flipped a switch. Daniel Henderson moved closer, slower now, more cautious. His earlier urgency had drained into something else. Respect or fear. Maybe both. "You made your point," Henderson said quietly. Charles didn't look at him. "I enforced a contract," he replied. Henderson exhaled through his nose, shaking his head slightly. "You shut down an international hub. I protected my family." The words came clean. Final. Not negotiable. Henderson didn't answer, because there was nothing to say that didn't sound weak next to that. Alyssa stepped back slightly, giving space as her father spoke. Her eyes moved across the terminal, taking it all in. The reset, the movement, the shift in posture from every staff member within view. Different now. Careful, measured, aware. Amara leaned closer to her. "Everyone's staring," she whispered. Alyssa nodded once. "Let them." There was no pride in her voice, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Because this wasn't about being seen, it was about being recognized. Gary approached again, this time slower, more deliberate, holding 2 freshly printed boarding passes in both hands as if they carried weight. "Miss Grant." "Miss Grant," he said, stopping just short of them. His tone had changed completely. Softer, respectful, careful. He extended the passes. "We've upgraded you to our residence suite for the Zurich leg, full service, private cabin, and we've issued a complete refund for your original tickets." He paused, then added, "And a formal apology has already been initiated at the corporate level." Alyssa took the passes, looked at them briefly, then back at Gary. "It shouldn't take all of this," she said. Her voice stayed even, but it landed harder than anything loud. Gary nodded immediately. "You're right. No defense, no excuse, just agreement." "Then make sure it doesn't happen again," Alyssa said. Gary held her gaze. "It won't. Not here." Behind them, The line continued moving. Faster now. Smoother. No hesitation at the scanners. No extra questions. No second looks. A man in a tracksuit stepped forward to the counter. Young, black, headphones resting around his neck, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The new agent, David, looked up, paused, just for a fraction of a second, then smiled. "Good morning, sir," he said. "May I see your boarding pass?" The man handed it over. David scanned it. The machine chirped green. "Welcome aboard," David said, handing it back with both hands. No suspicion, no delay, no judgment. Just process. Just respect. Alyssa watched it happen. Didn't comment. Didn't need to. The change was already visible. Charles adjusted the cuff of his sleeve, the movement small, precise. He turned back to Henderson. "Send the disruption report to my office," he said. "We'll cover the slot penalties." Henderson blinked. "You're covering the—" "Yes." The answer came before the question finished. Not generosity. Not kindness. Balance. Henderson studied him for a moment. "You're a difficult man to negotiate with." Charles looked at him finally. Not smiling. "Only when I have to be." Henderson let out a quiet breath. "Let's hope it doesn't come to this again." Charles didn't respond, because hope wasn't a strategy. Alyssa stepped closer again. "We should go," she said. Charles nodded. "Go to the lounge," he told them. "Call your mother when you land." Amara gave a small smile. The first one since it started. "We will." Alyssa hesitated, just for a second, then looked at him. "Thank you." Charles shook his head slightly. "Don't thank me," he said. "Expect this." The word settled between them. Expectation, not exception. He stepped back, giving them space, letting them move forward. They turned toward the priority lane. This time, no one blocked it. Officer Reed stood near the entrance, posture straighter now, eyes lowered as they approached. He reached out and lifted the velvet rope without a word. "Have a good flight," he said quietly. Alyssa didn't respond. Didn't need to. She walked through, head high, step steady. Amara followed close behind, her suitcase wheels gliding over the polished floor, the sound clean, uninterrupted. Behind them, the terminal continued to move, but differently, more aware, more careful, more deliberate. Charles watched them go, just for a moment, then turned. His security team fell into step beside him instantly. Henderson lingered behind, watching the man walk away with the same quiet authority he had arrived with. No rush, no hesitation, just control. As the automatic doors opened again, the outside light spilled in, bright against the controlled chaos inside. And for the first time since it started, the system wasn't just running. It was learning. 3 days later, the air in Zurich felt nothing like JFK. It was clean, cold, precise. The kind of cold that sharpened everything instead of numbing it. Snow clung to the edges of rooftops, soft and deliberate, like the city had decided exactly where winter should sit and nowhere else. Alyssa leaned back in her chair on the terrace, the wool blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders, a glass of water untouched on the table beside her. Below, the city stretched out in quiet order, lights glowing against the fading afternoon. Amara sat across from her, fingers wrapped around a warm cup, watching the steam curl upward. For the first time in days, there was no noise, no crowd, no pressure, no eyes. Just stillness. "You haven't posted it," Amara said. Not a question. Alyssa didn't look up. Her phone rested face down on the table. "No." Amara studied her for a moment. "You could." Alyssa nodded once. "I know. Because the video was there. Every second of it." The moment Linda's voice sharpened, the accusation, the call to security, the walk away from the counter, the shift, the reveal, it was all there. Clean, clear, undeniable. Amara leaned back slightly. It would blow up. Alyssa let out a slow breath. "I'm not interested in blowing anything up." Her voice stayed calm, but something underneath it held weight. "I'm interested in not having to go through it again." Amara didn't respond, because that part wasn't solved by a video. Silence settled again between them. Soft. Controlled. Then Amara's phone buzzed. Once. Then again. And again. She frowned, glancing down. Her expression shifted almost immediately. Not confusion, not curiosity. Something sharper. "Alyssa," she said quietly. Alyssa didn't move. "Don't look at Twitter." That made her look. Slowly. She flipped her phone over. The screen lit up instantly. Notifications. Dozens. No, hundreds. Her thumb hovered for half a second, then tapped. The video filled the screen. Not hers. Different angle. Behind them, slightly to the left. The businessman in the navy blazer. The one who had been watching. Recording. Uploading. The caption sat at the top. "Gate agent profiles the wrong passengers. Father shuts down the airport." Below it, numbers. Views climbing in real time. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. It didn't slow down. It accelerated. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. "This is insane. Did she really say that?" He shut down the fuel. "That's power. Someone's getting fired. Already fired. Good. About time." Alyssa scrolled. More clips, more angles, different cuts of the same moment. Linda's voice isolated. Charles stepping forward. The recording playing. The silence. The shift. The reveal. Every second dissected. Analyzed. Shared. The narrative was already forming, and it wasn't quiet. Amara leaned forward, turning her screen toward her. "It's everywhere," she said. "News picked it up. Blogs, business pages." Alyssa didn't respond. Her eyes stayed on the screen. Because this part she hadn't planned. Her phone vibrated again. A call. She didn't need to check the name. She answered. "Dad." Charles's voice came through clean, calm, controlled as ever. "I saw it." Alyssa exhaled slightly. "We didn't post anything." "I know." A pause. Paper shuffled faintly on his end. The background of his office. Familiar. Structured. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes." Another pause. Then good. No lecture, no questions. Just confirmation. Amara leaned closer, listening. "It's getting bigger," Alyssa said. "I'm aware." A beat. "My PR team has already declined 3 national interview requests," Charles added. "They're calling it a leverage case." Alyssa almost smiled. Of course they were. "What about the company?" she asked. "Stock is up 4% this morning." The answer came without hesitation. "Matter of fact, market responds well to decisive action." Amara let out a quiet breath. Of course it does. Alyssa looked back out at the mountains. White, still, unmoving. "What about her?" she asked. She didn't say the name. She didn't need to. Charles understood. "The internet found her," he said. Alyssa's jaw tightened slightly. "Is she removed?" Charles said. "From the position where she could cause harm?" A pause. Then his tone shifted. Slightly. Lower. More deliberate. "I didn't ask for anything beyond that." Alyssa nodded, even though he couldn't see it. "I know." Silence again, but not empty. Measured. Then, "We live in a glass world now," Charles said. Alyssa's eyes narrowed slightly. "Everything is recorded. Everything is shared. Everything is judged." His voice stayed even. "But character?" He paused. "Character is still the only thing you control." Alyssa absorbed that. Didn't answer. Because there was nothing to add. "What did the airline say?" she asked. "They sent a formal apology," Charles replied, "and offered lifetime executive status." Amara raised her eyebrows. "First class, anywhere they fly. For both of you." Alyssa didn't react. The offer meant nothing. Not compared to what had happened. "Are you satisfied?" Charles asked. The question wasn't casual. It carried weight, finality. Alyssa looked out again. At the mountains, at the stillness, at the space between everything. "We didn't want any of this," she said. Her voice stayed quiet. Honest. "We just wanted to get on a plane." On the other end, silence. Then "I know." Another pause. Then his voice softened. Just slightly. "Enjoy the trip," he said. "That's what you were supposed to be doing." Alyssa let out a slow breath. "Okay. And Alyssa, yes, a beat. Next time," his tone shifted again. Back to something lighter, controlled, but familiar. "Wear the blazer," Alyssa almost smiled. "Why?" "It scares them more than the hoodie." The line hung there. Not as a joke, as truth. The call ended. Alyssa set the phone down. The screen still lit. The video still climbing. The world still watching. Amara leaned back, shaking her head slightly. "This is never going away," she said. Alyssa didn't disagree. She just looked out at the horizon. And for a moment, let the silence win. 2 weeks later, Terminal 4 at JFK didn't look different. But it felt different. The same polished floors, the same rolling suitcases, the same overhead announcements echoing through the space with mechanical precision. Flights departing. flights arriving, lives moving forward. But something under it had shifted. Something quiet. Something permanent. At the Centurion Air Priority Desk, a new agent stood where Linda Whitmore used to stand. His name was David Carter. 28. Fresh uniform. Shoulders tight with the awareness that every movement mattered now. He didn't lean back. He didn't scan the crowd for who didn't belong. He watched carefully. Not for threats, for mistakes. The line moved steadily in front of him. No tension, no hesitation. Just process. A man stepped forward. Black, early 30s, athletic build, hoodie, headphones resting around his neck, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. 2 weeks ago, that would have been enough. Enough for a second look. Enough for suspicion. Enough for delay. David didn't hesitate. "Good morning, sir," he said, voice calm, even. "May I see your boarding pass?" The man handed it over. David scanned it. Green. "Thank you," he said, handing it back with both hands. "The lounge is to your left. No pause. No judgment. No problem." The man nodded once and moved on. Behind the desk, another agent watched it happen, then adjusted her posture slightly. Learning. Because everyone was learning now. In the break room, the story had already turned into something else. Not gossip, not rumor. Warning. They spoke about it in lower voices. Not because it was secret, because it was understood. You don't assume anymore. You don't guess. You verify, because sometimes the person standing in front of you isn't just a passenger. Sometimes they are the system. Across the terminal, a supervisor walked past the desk, eyes scanning everything with sharper attention. Not looking for mistakes to punish, looking for mistakes to prevent. The change wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It showed in small things. The way voices stayed neutral, the way questions were asked, the way assumptions stopped. The ghost of what had happened still lived there. Not visible, but present, in every interaction, in every decision, in every pause before judgment. Because everyone remembered, not just what happened, but how fast it happened. How one moment, one choice, one assumption had turned into something much bigger. Much faster than anyone expected. In a corner of the terminal, a television screen played muted news footage, clips of the incident, short segments, edited, contained, but still powerful. Charles Grant stepping forward, the recording playing, the silence, the shift, the consequence. A headline scrolled beneath it. Corporate accountability forces airline disruption. Another. CEO enforces contract after discrimination claim. Different words. Same story. The camera cut to analysts discussing leverage. Power. Risk. But none of them had been there. None of them had felt it. The moment when control changes hands. The moment when assumption meets reality. Back at the desk, David scanned another boarding pass. Green. He handed it back with a slight nod. Have a good flight. Simple, clear, correct. The line moved. No delay, no friction, no incident. And that was the point. Not perfection, consistency. Because the lesson wasn't about fear. It wasn't about power. It was about awareness, respect, the understanding that every person in front of you carries something you don't see, something you don't know, and the cost of getting it wrong is higher than you think, far higher. The system kept moving. Flights departed. Passengers boarded. Life continued. But the standard had changed. Quietly. Permanently. Somewhere above the Atlantic, another aircraft cut through the sky, steady and controlled, its engines fueled, its course locked in. Inside, passengers sat in their seats, unaware of what had happened days before, unaware of how close the system had come to stopping, unaware of how fragile it all really was, and how quickly it could shift. All it takes is one moment, one decision, one assumption, and everything changes. That is the world now. Fast, connected, unforgiving, where character shows before credentials, where actions travel further than intentions, where respect isn't optional, it's survival. Because the person you dismiss today might be the one holding everything together tomorrow. And when that moment comes, there's no time to fix it, only time to face it. If this story stayed with you, take a second to like and subscribe, and drop 3 words in the comments that describe what you felt while watching this unfold.